Hi, everyone. Welcome again to our Positive Workplaces webinar today. So our topic today is trauma-informed positive education and how we can help underprivileged learners succeed. So we're all slowly coming into the room. We'll start at exactly 3 o'clock. So if you're already here, let us know in the chat box. Where are you calling from? So for me, for instance, I'm always in Quezon City, and one of the great privileges of having this setup is we can come from different places. Tapos we can be together right now. Like we can just jump into this virtual learning session and all be together. So if you're here, let us know. So Anne Christie is from Quezon and Rebecca are also from Quezon City as well. Rebecca Young Focus. Ooh, Pauline's here again from the gig. And I love that there are probably a lot of teachers here right now, no? But it's welcome to everyone. Everyone can join. Like Pauline is a regular. We have Leoniel is from Surigao. I'm so jealous. I wish I could go to the beach right now. We have also different people from Olongapo, Bulacan, Caloocan, Marikina, Cavite. It's nice that you're all here. Welcome, everyone. So we'll start in a minute. Adineco is from Ateneo de Manila. Oh, nice. My alma mater. And Agusan del Sur, North Cotabato. See, ang lawak ng reach, ang lawak ng pinanggagalingan ng audience natin ngayon. So it's so nice. I'm so glad that you all took the time to join me for this hour. So again, we're talking about trauma-informed positive education, helping underprivileged learners succeed. So it's 3 o'clock and I'm going to start already. Welcome, everybody. So I'm Nikki. I'm the Chief Wellbeing Officer and also the co-founder of Positive Workplaces. I've been studying psychology for a decade. I studied a master's in counseling psychology from Ateneo. I saw that someone's from Ateneo here as well. And also, I really wanted to learn more about thriving and flourishing and being at your best. So I also went to the University of Melbourne to study a Master of Applied Positive Psychology. So we're Positive Workplaces, and we've been doing these webinars for a little more than a year now. Our mission is to co-create cultures that enhance the well-being of the Filipino workforce. And we imagine that this is how it's going to be done. It starts with people learning to lead themselves. You all coming to this session, learning to be a better leader. It's going to equip you to be better leaders, better teachers to your students. So when you lead them, and together you're creating cultures, you have that opportunity to create positive workplaces. So this month of August, we're focusing on that education, the education system as a workplace. So just some reminders before we start: have another device or be ready to go to another link. So if you had a phone or a tablet, it's nice. But if you don't have that, just be ready to go to another link. Or if you want to participate in the chat box if Mentimeter is a challenge, please, I'd love to hear your thoughts then on the chat box. See, I love reading it. If I'm looking here, it means I'm looking at the chat box. And even if initially everyone's on mute, I love hearing your thoughts, your questions. Put your thoughts here. Later, we'll do a Q&A on Pigeonhole and we'll paste the links as we go along. And if later you want to say something, don't hesitate to raise your hand. And at the end of this, you will get a certificate. So please, if you answer the evaluation, make sure you write your full name and you'll get a certificate after that. And our evaluation is only open for 30 minutes. So as soon as the call ends, hope you can answer that already. So this month, we've been focusing on teachers and well-being and sharing about positive education. So I salute all of the teachers who are here today. This is a workplace and a work setup that's really close to my heart because before I became co-founder and a consultant in Positive Workplaces, I spent my career as a teacher. So a lot of people would know me as Teacher Nikki, especially my young students. I used to be a grade 3 teacher. So I was teaching in Commonwealth Elementary School, which is a public school near, in Commonwealth. And I taught math, science, and English. And before that, I was a high school teacher in Bukidnon. So in Father Leone Memorial School, I taught physics, trigonometry, geometry, algebra, and English. So that's my past life. I used to be known as Teacher Nikki. And so, I mean, I'm curious if there's any people here who are public school teachers or, some people from Teach for the Philippines. I think they would know like in background. So I was able to teach in the public school through an opportunity with Teach for the Philippines. And I'm really grateful for it. So lots of people I'm seeing in the chat box are teachers like Michael and others, teacher supporters. So I'm so glad. This is going to be our roadmap for today. First, we'll talk about why is there a need to be trauma informed. So why do we have to pay a certain focus on people who have been affected by trauma? And then we'll talk about what is trauma-informed positive education. I only encountered this in 2019. It's quite new, and I'll be sharing that with you. And lastly, we'll talk about how we always end our workshops or webinars here with something really pragmatic for you to take away in the end. So we'll talk about how can we embed positive education when teaching in difficult circumstances. So I just want to check in. For those, especially the teachers, what's the most challenging thing about being a teacher these days? So please go to menti.com. You can click on the link that McKay, who is supporting behind the scenes, has put in the chat box, or you can scan this QR code on the screen. Or if you go to menti.com, you can type this code 648952020. It's always going to be at the top. So even if I change slides, it's always going to be at the top. So let's check in. Let me know what's the most challenging thing about being a teacher these days. So someone said unnecessary paperwork. Definitely, that was a very challenging thing for me to have to do all of that admin on top of the work that I was already doing. Technology is a challenge, diba? How can, for a lot of you, you may be teaching your students now from a distance. Most of us are, that's the setup. So technology, internet, if it's not working well, that's quite a challenge. Online classes, we've all seen the memes that students are posting about how they feel about online classes, diba? Yung fresh daw sila nag-start. I see this from my students. They post a lot of memes. Sobrang fresh daw nila nung nag-start sila ng class. And when they shifted to this online setup, they feel super haggard na daw. So short attention on Zoom. We feel that like it's easier to pay attention face to face, and on Zoom, it's quite a challenge. The word internet is getting bigger. That means many people are saying that. So internet talaga is a challenge. If it's not stable, a lot of people are saying if it's weak, if your fellow teachers are uncooperative, checking in on your students is a challenge, integrating technology when maybe that's not our training in the past, right? Reaching students, especially students who are maybe having a hard time. If you're living in a remote area, extra challenging. Someone here mentioned then being a pseudo counselor, and I hear you. It's like you were not, as teachers, we were not trained necessarily to be a counselor for our students. Pero tayo yung we're the first people that they touch base with. So we're the first professionals who are able to sense that something's not right or they're not okay. So we're the first ones to see that. And sometimes we have to play the role of showing care, showing attention, helping them unpack their problems and listening. So that's definitely a challenge. Modular work is a challenge. What else? A lot of workload. So yeah, especially we didn't think it could be any more from before, no, but like right now, a lot of workloads, how to engage your students online. Mary Grace is saying the chat box, work-life balance. Giselle is saying burnout. So these are all, I hear you and I acknowledge and validate na it's such a difficult thing to be a teacher these days. And I'm amazed at all of you because on top of all of these challenges, you're still going the extra step of attending a training that you just want to take to help your students. So I'm super grateful that you're all here despite all of these challenges. you being here shows that you're so committed to being good teachers to your students. So thank you. Now I want to just check the profile of our audience. Can you let me know, are you a public school teacher or maybe a private school teacher, or you're not a teacher but you're in the education system, maybe you're a principal, maybe you're a academic level coordinator, or others. Let me know if you fall under others as well. Like for instance, our regulars here in our webinars, if you're always just coming in because you're curious, doesn't matter if we're talking about education or whatnot, you're just coming here because you're curious, let me know. So I'm gonna refresh this just in case. So let me know. This is gonna help me get a gauge of where you're all coming from. So yeah, I refreshed yung Mentimeter. So looks like some people are saying they're from public schools, private, tertiary level faculty, sabi ni Jude. Others, sabi ni Anna. So thanks. That's helping me get a gauge. I don't know why this is not updating on my slide. So si Eunice naman is a BSX student and she's curious. So thanks Eunice for that curiosity and coming here. Ayan, so it's finally refreshed. It looks like this is almost like an equal spread, no? Like of public school teachers, private school teachers, other people in education, and other people who are just curious, coming in here curious. Jennifer is also a student taking education. Rebecca's a coordinator or a teacher in an NGO. Yeah, so I'm so glad na even, I mean, especially for those students here who are going to be teachers in the future, I wish I did before what you're doing right now to be able to equip myself better. The training, the learning, it really starts as early as now. So that initiative, I admire all of you for it. So thanks for giving me a glimpse of what our audience is like right now. So we're going to start off with this. Why is there a need to be trauma informed? And I want to start with a definition of trauma first. I'm taking it from the research of Brunzell, Waters, and Stokes. They define trauma as an experience that leads one to believe that the world isn't safe. So I just wanted to highlight here na trauma is not the event, it's your experience of the event. So for instance, the pandemic. All of us are experiencing the pandemic, but not all of us are experiencing trauma because of it. Some people are okay. Some people, even if this is happening, it doesn't change their perception of the world. They don't think that the world is unsafe. But if there is an experience that leads you to believe that the world is not safe, then that's a definition of trauma that we're going to read from right now. And I want to ask you, what experiences do you think would make students feel that the world is not safe? Maybe try to empathize with some of your students and try to think, what are some experiences that would make them think that the world is not safe? So you can scan that QR code or click on the Menti link in the chat box. So sabi ni Rafaela sa chat box, maybe patriarchy could be a concern. Harold said harassment could be a concern, whether it happens, whether in your community, even in your own home, in school, that's something that could make someone feel unsafe. And that could be a source of trauma. Abuse, bullying. So let's see what people are responding here. Right now, not being able to go out to explore. So for it really depends where we're coming from, right? So this is such a good answer because sometimes we don't think of it, but some of our students are confined in such small places and they're realizing that if they go out, my virus, or if somebody goes out and they come home, there's a virus around. So there's that sense that, okay, the world is not safe right now. The virus, poverty, if you're hungry, if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, that can be a source of trauma as well. The loss of your loved ones during the pandemic can be a source of trauma. Again, hunger, food insecurity, being harassed, being sexually assaulted, being humiliated, like extreme humiliation can be a source of trauma. Bullying could be a source of trauma. Violence at home, domestic violence, that's also one of them. Um, what else? Even if, like, even this, it some people na sobrang invested in doing good at school and not getting to sleep, not getting to eat because of it, or they think something really bad is gonna happen if they don't do well in school. That investment in their schoolwork, that could be a source of trauma as well. Red tagging students, it's really sad, and I know it happens. That's a source of trauma. Failure could be a source of trauma. Being discriminated, crimes in your neighborhood. I do remember I had students before na hindi sila pumapasok kasi they were so worried that on their walk going to school, they might be there were criminals around their area, and they felt na it wasn't safe to go to school. So that's also a source of trauma. Having an unconventional family setup that perhaps isn't safe could be one too. Too much pressure, sexual harassment. So all of these are sources of trauma. And especially for teachers who worked in under-resourced schools. So I know that a lot of people here are public school teachers. Teachers who work in under-resourced schools are likely working with children who have been affected by trauma. And I wish this was something that I knew before I became a public school teacher, because it needs extra care and attention and training to be able to handle students who have been affected by trauma. And it's likely that if you're a teacher, you're teaching in a community that is under-resourced, it's likely that some of your students have been affected by trauma. And teaching trauma-affected students is especially challenging. So sometimes these students who have been affected by trauma can exhibit symptoms like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So we're not diagnosing our students. That's not our role actually as teachers. A professional has to be the one doing that, or we have to refer them to guidance, and sometimes they even have to get referred to psychologists. So we're not here to diagnose them, but it's something that we observe, that students who are affected by trauma could exhibit the symptoms of ADHD. They could exhibit the symptoms of conduct and oppositional defiance disorders, or where they're very violent towards others. Or yeah, they could be really aggressive, and they're the ones who may be experiencing inadequate emotional regulation skills. Now, it's so hard for them to manage their emotions, and also they're extra hyper vigilant. So I don't know if some of you have noticed any of these in your students. Maybe they're having a hard time paying attention. Maybe they get so angry so quick and they don't know how to calm themselves down. Maybe they've hurt their other classmates or hurt themselves, because when they're not feeling well, they get really aggressive, and people get hurt in the process. So if you've ever experienced violence in your classroom, or even violence these days, you hearing about it, or you're seeing verbal violence, that could be those are symptoms of trauma affected students sometimes. And this is what I've learned, na hurt people actually hurt people. So it's not surprising that some of your students may be hurting others. It's maybe because they're coming from a place of trauma as well, and hurt. And so this is a saying, I don't even know who said it anymore. I can't even find the source. It seems like it's a common saying that hurt people hurt people. So if you have students who hurt others, let's think again about what their context might be. Let's empathize with them, because it's likely that they have been hurt themselves and they're not fully aware that they're also hurting other people. So teachers who deal with trauma affected students, they say that the experience is emotionally draining and that their relationships with the students are often unsteady. Like one day you're okay with them, the next day you're not. I definitely experienced this. Now, one day it's like I'm really good friends and I'm really my relationship with my students is so good, and then the next day they're mad, and then the day after that they're okay again. So parang that's what I felt as a teacher in the public school. Na I don't know exactly which relationship I'm gonna have with my student today. It's always like a surprise, and I don't know. It's hard to predict that. So our relationships were often unsteady, and there were instances when it was very manipulative and conditional. So there were instances when I felt that I had to be a certain way for them, or that, very mautak sila sometimes. Sometimes it did feel like I was being manipulated to do what they wanted to do. And I was very naive when I was a public school teacher. So that's, if you've ever felt that with your students, especially those who have been affected by trauma, just recognize that these are signs of them being affected by trauma. They're not necessarily, out there to hurt you, out there to make your job very difficult, but they're coming from a certain trauma affected background, and this is often a symptom of that background. And so a lot of us public school teachers, you may probably have experienced that teaching is very difficult in a public school, especially if you're teaching in an area that's very under resourced. And now, on top of everything, the pandemic has actually been really traumatizing for a lot of people. Not being able to go out of your house, being afraid of the virus, seeing deaths left and right, hearing of people dying every day and getting sick, or maybe your students have parents who have lost their jobs. All of this have been making us feel unsafe. So before, I thought that it's only the public school teachers who would need this kind of training, or the information that we're sharing here today. But now I see that it's not just people who are living in under-resourced communities, or who are having a hard time making ends meet. It's almost everyone has felt trauma in one way or another throughout the pandemic. And so it's so important that we actually share that message, put that message out there, and learn how we can equip ourselves to better respond to students who have been affected by trauma. So my experience was, I was so optimistic. I was very young when I was very young, almost fresh off of college when I became a public school teacher. And if you know me, or people would typically describe me as someone who's really optimistic. I'm super, super hopeful about what could be the possibilities. I'm so optimistic about the future. I'm so optimistic about everybody's potential. Some of my friends would describe me as very pure of heart. And I wanted to bring that to my students in the public school. I wanted to be the one to really believe in them, see the best in them. But what I didn't realize was I was kind of ignorant, like thinking that I could just come in the public school and just bring in my positivity and my optimism without being grounded in the reality. Because the reality was, if I could put down the words of what my students probably have experienced with me, if I had to place it in words, I think, so they didn't say this to me, but I would think if I had to put it down in words, it's almost as if they were telling me at times, do you even see or recognize my pain? Because I was always so optimistic. I was always like, never mind the negative. Let's focus on what we can do. Let's focus on the possibilities. But oftentimes they were trying to communicate with me, I live in a difficult neighborhood, or my parents don't have jobs. I don't have food to eat. And then their teacher was just super optimistic na, yeah, we can pass any exam you throw at us. We don't know how to read right now, but we will be able to learn how to read at the end of the year. And there's nothing wrong with optimism. In fact, I encourage all of you to find hope and be optimistic about something. but don't do it at the expense of ignoring the state of your students. So if right now they're having a hard time, don't brush that off and say, don't focus on that, focus on the positive. Actually acknowledge that they're facing difficulties, they're having a hard time. That's something that I wish I learned when I was younger. So that's why it's so important for all of us to learn about trauma informed positive education. So, what is trauma informed positive education? So, again, it's from the research of Brunzell, Stokes, and Waters. And it's a combination of trauma informed learning. Part of trauma informed learning is helping learners repair their regulatory abilities. So, students who have been affected by trauma actually have a hard time self regulating, calming themselves, stabilizing their emotions, controlling themselves. Is actually really difficult for them because of their experiences. Another challenge for them is their attachment. Many of them have experienced through their relationships that the world is not safe. Maybe their parents were negligent, or maybe their caretakers were negligent, and somewhere along the way they realized that they couldn't trust people. So part of trauma informed learning is having to repair that disrupted attachment, because they have to learn to form bonds with people again. They have to learn how to trust people again. So that is trauma-informed learning. On the other hand, there was positive education. Positive education, I was really quite familiar with na, you focus on the strengths, you help your students thrive and be their very best. You don't just teach them how to be academically successful, you give them life skills so that they can thrive and be their very best and reach their potential. So there's positive education, where the focus was all about increasing psychological resources. So those two were actually quite separate. They didn't overlap until the research came along of these authors here on the lower left. They created a new model, which was called trauma-informed positive education, acknowledging that some of your students who are trauma affected actually they need all of that repairing their relationships, learning how to regulate themselves. But at the same time, you don't have to stop there. You don't have to stop with just repairing. In fact, you can help them go on and increase all of their psychological resources, because positive education, it's for everyone. But initially, there was not a lot of research on how positive education could be tailor fit for students who have been affected by trauma. So because of this new model, the trauma-informed positive education, it's a combination of both, and it's something that you can really learn the strategies for, so that you can help even your most unprivileged students succeed. So it's for everybody. And I'm so grateful that this model came along and that I stumbled upon it just a few years ago. So I'll teach you more about that. How can we embed positive education when teaching in difficult circumstances? So there are 6 things that we're going to be tackling today. And there's actually a beauty in the chronological order of these things. So at the very beginning, self-regulation is something that you're going to have to embed when you're teaching, or it's something that you're going to have to help your students learn how to do. Because as I mentioned earlier, students who have been affected by trauma, they have a hard time regulating or controlling themselves. The next focus is going to be on relationships, and then building positive emotions, building character strengths, teaching them how to have a resilient mindset, and also teaching them gratitude. So these are 6 strategies you can really implement as a teacher. And very critical, the first one, it's a really important foundation, it's self-regulation. So I want you to look at your hand right now. If you could look at your hand, you can raise your hand. This is the hand model of the brain by Dr. Dan Siegel. So this is just a way for us to remember the parts of the brain. So if this is your hand, this thumb, if you fold it in, that represents your amygdala. So that is the seat of your emotions. So if you're feeling angry, you're feeling scared, it's your amygdala that is lighting up in your brain. So that thumb is a representation of your amygdala, or the seat of your emotions. And if you take your four fingers on top and fold it on top, that that represents your prefrontal cortex. And your prefrontal cortex is really important because you need that part of your brain for rational thinking, decision making, for your executive memory, for so of the tasks that we need for learning. We really need our prefrontal cortex for that. So what happens when our amygdala is acting up? If something in the world is making us feel unsafe, if something in the world is making us feel stressed, anxious, we have a lot of fear, a lot of these emotions, what happens is our prefrontal cortex flips out. So if your students are feeling fear, anger, all of these big emotions, your prefrontal cortex flips out and you're not able to access your prefrontal cortex for rational thinking. And maybe some of you have experienced that when you were fearful, anxious, stressed, tired, di ba ang hirap mag-isip ng malinaw? It's really hard to think clearly. So that's what happens in our brain. So this is the model of our brain. Inside our brain, you will see the prefrontal cortex sits on top of the amygdala. And if your amygdala is acting up, your prefrontal cortex is going to flip out and you cannot think and do decision making and clear rational thought. So that is why it is super important that we help our students self-regulate, whether in the class or if we provide them the skills to recognize when they're having these big emotions. The first thing that you really have to do is to help them calm down. If they're not calm, they will not be able to learn. So don't think that you could just ignore this aspect of your students, their emotions, and just focus on the teaching, because they will not be able to learn if their amygdala is flared up, their prefrontal cortex flips out, and they wouldn't be able to learn. So you can invest all of the efforts into teaching them, invest your time, your energy into making all of the best worksheets. But if they're not feeling well, if they're not okay, if their amygdala is flared up, their prefrontal cortex will flip and they will not be able to learn. So some of my tips for you for helping your students with self-regulation is this. Especially in online class, you can actually embed mindfulness exercises to help your students just calm down. I would even recommend starting your day with something that helps everyone regulate themselves. These things that I put on the slides are actually called breathing GIFs. So you could Google that, breathing GIFs, and then you could embed it on your slide so that before you start your class, you'd have these breathing GIFs, and it's going to be a prompt for everybody to inhale and exhale. So that's something that let's do right now. So let's do this right now. Let's follow the GIFs and let's try that breathing for a moment. So right now, exhale, hold it, and inhale. And hold and exhale. And hold and inhale. And hold and exhale. And just continue following the GIF for 2 more breaths. Yeah, now I want to know if you were able to try the exercise. Can you share in the chat box? Ooh, how did that feel? So Noel said it was so relaxing. So I'm glad that helped you relax. And that wasn't even more than a minute. Catherine said the same thing as well. And Jude said calming. Avelina and Jennifer said relaxing. Mo and Christine said that too. Angelica said it helped me clear my mind right now. It's very relieving. Jacqueline said it feels good. Ronally said it's recharging. And this one, it doesn't cost us anything to do. But sometimes when we want to de-stress, people are like, retail therapy, eat something, buy something. This one, it doesn't cost anything. You just breathe. You always have access to your breath. And honestly, sometimes we forget. Diba? I don't have to tell you to breathe. You're breathing every day, but this like using your breath, accessing your breath to calm you down. If we as adults, we forget it, it could be that our students are forgetting it as well. And your breathing is so important because it regulates so many parts of your body. It can regulate your adrenal cortex, so you produce less cortisol or less stress hormones. So if you're able to breathe in deeply and breathe out, you're actually training your body and telling your body you're okay, you're safe. There's no need to produce a lot of adrenaline. You don't have to run right now. There's no need to stress out your body with a stress response. You can access that through your breath. And it's a good reminder for you and your students. So these breathing GIFs, you can actually just Google them and then pick your favorite ones, embed it in your slides if you have it. And it's something that will prompt your students and you to just take that moment to self-regulate. And let's say you're not doing your classes online like this, you could even just, if you had that chat with them or when you communicate with them, just give them prompts for this now. Today, please focus, do 10 deep inhales, hold it for 5 seconds each time, and then do 5 deep exhales. So just telling your students to breathe is something that will really help them self-regulate. Another thing that I want you to, that another practice that you can also start doing is doing a check-in of how ready your students are to learn. So let's do this right now on menti.com. Click on the link that Nikki has posted in the chat box or scan this QR code on the screen and let me know what's your answer to this? How ready are you to learn right now? So giving your students that prompt that it could be arranged. Because sometimes we force our students to be ready to learn, but the truth is, especially with our students who have been affected by trauma, we're not always 100% ready to learn all the time, and that's okay. Sometimes you're dealing with something difficult in their lives. Sometimes you're dealing with very difficult emotions. So it's okay that you're not always fully ready to learn all the time. So if you're seeing this, for instance, if I'm seeing this in a class, okay, I'm seeing that most people are excited about learning. That's great. They are the students who will not be having a hard time listening to you. They're the students who are ready to recite. They're the students who are ready to do their homework. And that's great. And then there are students who are good to learn. So they're not as excited, but they're good and they're ready. And there are some students who are going to be really lukewarm about learning. Maybe and the students also who are still trying to motivate themselves to learn. It's just something to be aware of, that not everyone is ready to learn. Not everyone comes into your classroom having the same experience outside of it. Sometimes they're having difficulties. Sometimes they're really stressed out. So asking at the very beginning of your class, how ready are you to learn, is something that will help you gauge. Maybe you have to slow down. Maybe you have to be more empathic to some of your students. And you don't have to push them to be ready to learn right away. These are the students, these 18 and 11, they're the ones who would really, really, really benefit from having a self-regulation exercise in your class. So I do recommend, if you check in with your students at the beginning, and if you're recognizing that not a lot of them are ready to learn, take more time in doing the self-regulation with everyone. They would likely learn more. That would prime them to learn better in your class, and that would also help them be less disruptive to other students in your class. So it's a win for everyone. If you check in on your students and you recognize that there are some students who are not really ready to learn right now, that's okay. Just take more time in the self-regulation phase to prime them better. So that's something you can do in your class as well. It doesn't always have to be Mentimeter. You could even just ask, how ready are you to learn right now? Maybe give them options from 1 to 4, and that could be a habit that you build in your classroom. So that's something that will help you out. And another thing that you could do to self-regulate is that's accessible to everyone. So I know sometimes eye strain can be a difficulty. So this is something we'll do right now. If you could just grab any tangible object that is on your desk right now, or on your desk or within your reach, just grab anything. So for instance, I'm going to grab this paper towel. So just grab it, any tangible object. And then let's take 2 minutes, or I'll just do 1 minute for the purpose of this demo. Let's take 1 minute to just look at that object. So I want you to turn away from the screen, get any tangible object, and just look at that object for 2 minutes straight. I'll play some music while you look at that object. It's one way to relax your eyes. Try to notice things about the object. Maybe there's colors on the objects you didn't notice before. Maybe there are some textures, some details that you're really seeing now that you're really looking at it. You could even turn the object around, look at it from all angles. Look at it from up close or from afar. Yeah, so that's another thing that you can, an activity like during a break that you can have your students do to help them self-regulate. Because, sometimes we get a lot of eye strain from looking at the screen for a long time. So giving them that prompt to focus on something real is something that will help them calm down as well, especially if your students may be feeling that information overload. Looking at something real instead of giving them a Facebook break or like a check your messenger break, is looking at something real is something that will refresh their frontal cortex as well. So this is something that you could do with your students every once in a while. So that very first step that I really recommend is help your students self-regulate. Your students who have been affected by trauma or who are having a hard time focusing, they really need more assistance and more prompts in self-regulating. So if you can put in those GIFs, put in those mindfulness exercises, prompt them to do it during your class, that's something that will help them. And the next one that we're going to look at is relationships. So as I mentioned earlier, students who have been affected by trauma have relationships that are very strained. So I'll just pause for this question. So Christine said, is this also applicable for grades 1 to 2 learners? Yeah, it actually is really applicable even for our youngest learners. So some people even implement the knowledge of this with their preschool learners as well. So you just have to maybe adjust the task a little bit. So with younger learners, sometimes it's hard for them to just focus on their breath. So something you could do is you can guide them, hold your hand and then breathe in. And then when you're about to go down, that's when you prompt them to breathe out and then breathe in, breathe out. And you can help them trace their fingers. So you can contextualize some mindfulness exercises that could help them self-regulate with something more tangible. So again, just have them trace their fingers, and as you go up, breathe in, and you go down, breathe out. I know some people also did activities where they have their students put glitter and beads in a jar and then put water in it. And then when they shake the jar, they can, and then watch all of the glitters fall down. That's something that helps them. That's something that helps them capture their attention. Kasi feeling ko it's for older learners that you can prompt, okay, look at any ordinary object and just look at it. Children might get bored. So yung glitters, maybe if you had time to do that glitter jar activity with them, you can have them put glitters even in a water bottle and then shake it. And then as they watch it fall down, that's something that will help them with their attention, help them self-regulate. So sabi ni Benny Liza, sensory materials work well for the youngest learners. So definitely agree. You just have to tweak some activities sometimes to make it more tangible when your learners are younger. So thanks for asking that question, Christine. And so we'll go to the next one, which is relationships. I mentioned earlier that if you have students who have been affected by trauma, you have to help them repair their disrupted attachment styles. So based on the work of Ainsworth, and this has been around for a long time, and it's actually the basis of a lot of tips on relationships, tips on parenting. So Ainsworth observed that there are actually 3 attachment styles. So one is secure. If you have that attachment style, then as your predominant attachment style, then great. That means that your parents can leave and then come back without you feeling nervous or betrayed. It's because you're rooting from that experience that they've always taken good care of you. So they could leave, but in your heart they're going to come back. It doesn't make you anxious when your parents disappear. And when you grow up, that's how you feel about relationships as well. You trust people. When they promise something to you, it's easy for you to believe them because you have that experience that people are honest, people can be trusted, the world can be trusted. So lucky if that is your predominant attachment style. Another is avoidant. So if you've been badly hurt about a primary caregiver leaving, or someone, they promised something to you and then they weren't able to deliver, and you've been badly scarred by that before, what you might learn is to just not care, or to be very aloof, na never mind if this person comes and goes in my life. I've been hurt before, and so I don't want to connect to people anymore. I don't want to trust people. I don't want to form these relationships with people anymore. And another attachment style is the anxious or ambivalent. And you might have seen this, maybe some of your students you've seen na parang confusing how they're relating to their parents. Like their parents are there, they want the attention of their parents or their primary caregivers, but at the same time, they're pushing that person away, or they're begging for their caregiver's attention, but when they're given that attention, they get mad. So yung parang malabo na, yes, they want the relationship, but they also want to punish you for the way that you've hurt them before. So these attachment styles that have been evident in children through the research, they say you carry this out beyond the early years of your life. So these attachment styles are learned during your early years, but you carry them on in how you create relationships later in life. So those who had caregivers who really took care of them, who helped them feel that the world is safe and people can be trusted, great. They now have secure attachment styles as a predominant way of relating to others. But students who have been affected by trauma, you may notice na they could be avoidant. They don't want to form a bond with you. They don't trust you. They don't care. Whatever it is that you're saying, they don't care. Or there could be students na anxious or ambivalent. One day, one second, they want your attention. And then when you give their attention to them, they're mad about it. So, very confusing students, avoidant and anxious ambivalent, that's actually a sign of them learning that people could not be trusted at a very young age. So we got to acknowledge that they're coming from that place and not hate them or not brand them as bad people just because they're coming in with that type of attachment style. So what is the tip for everyone, for teachers? It's unconditional positive regard. We say this a lot in psychology, and this is actually really hard to do and hard to give, that no matter what another person does, it's you give unconditional love. And honestly, it's hard because you also get hurt, you also get tired, you also want to attach consequences to things that are happening. So here's a tip. Here's my easy tip for everyone. Instead of giving feedback that is attached to someone's character, like hindi ka na good boy, or you're a bad student, instead of saying something or giving that feedback that is attached to who they are as a person, instead, my tip for you is be really specific about giving that feedback to a specific behavior. So instead of attaching it to who they are as a person, give specific feedback and help them see the consequence instead of saying something negative about their character. So one example is, let's say your student, they didn't show up in class. Instead of saying you're lazy, what you can say instead is that specific thing that they actually did. I noticed that you haven't been attending class. And then tell them the consequence. If you don't go to class, you'll miss the opportunity to ask me questions and to interact with your classmates. So instead of branding them as a bad person and creating this consequence na, you don't go to class, therefore I don't love you, therefore I don't see you as a good person, that's really going to be difficult for your students, and you're adding to the burden that they're already carrying because of the trauma that they have experienced. So instead, I know you want to teach them to have better behavior, so focus on the behavior instead. I noticed you haven't been attending class. That's the behavior. What is the natural consequence of that behavior? If you don't go to class, you'll miss the opportunity to ask me questions, and you'll miss the opportunity to interact with your classmates. So now I want you to try that. So for instance, this is a situation, your student didn't do their homework. Give better feedback than saying you're irresponsible. So scan that QR code or click on the link in the chat box and try to think of that response. And I'll give you some time to think. So your student didn't do their homework. Give better feedback than saying you're irresponsible. Yeah, so one person said in the chat box, anonymous, because it was direct message. I really love the webinar. I can use it on my son. So definitely, these things, it doesn't just apply for teachers. You can also apply it for your relationships with other children, like with other children, like your own children. So what's better feedback than you're saying you're irresponsible? Oh, so it's nice that some people are jumping in with their actions instead, like asking them if they need help, or even validating the good thing that they've already done. So like this one, that's really clear on the feedback. You focus on the behavior. I noticed you haven't submitted your homework. And then you can ask them, is there a problem? How can I help you? So instead of coming in with a judgment that you're a bad child, you're a bad seed, you're lazy, just be really specific. What did they actually do? Um, and I like that this one is also tentative na maybe you forgot to answer your worksheets because sometimes people just forget with everything that's going on in the world, and then you could give them that opportunity to answer it so that they could do it. So you saying, hi, you missed out on the task, you're missing the opportunity to learn something new and to benefit from it. So that's really clear. And that's something that won't make them feel like they're bad people because they may have already felt that in the past. Um, I noticed you didn't submit your homework. When you don't do your homework, you miss the opportunity to practice what you learn and then let me know how I can help you. So this is really clear. They see the consequence of their behavior and they wouldn't attach na they're a bad person just because they did something wrong. Instead, you're focusing on the behavior and the behavior is something that they can change and learn to do better. So this is great feedback. Thanks so much for sharing. Oh, and this one also, if you continue skipping your homework, you cannot completely track your progress. So they wouldn't be able to track what they've learned and what they have yet to learn if you continue. So it's nice that you gave that consequence of this behavior if you continue skipping your homework. So brilliant. I really appreciate that people actively participated on this, and I'm seeing lots of really clear feedback on the very specific behavior and a lot of action steps on how you're going to address that. Yes, so thanks so much for your engagement in answering this. So again, be really specific. Be really specific about the behavior and then attach the natural consequence of what will happen. Versus threatening na, if you don't do this, I'm gonna think you're a bad boy. If you don't do this, isusumbong kita. Just, it's nicer to attach the behavior to the logical consequence of what's really gonna happen if they don't do it. And my next tip, the next one, so we focus on self-regulation, we focus on repairing those relationships by embodying unconditional positive regard. The next one is positive emotions. So I want to ask you, what positive emotions do you want your students to feel while they're learning? So what positive emotions do you want your students to feel while they're learning? My tip for you is to become really aware about what those positive emotions are. For instance, before I design a training, I try to think about, okay, what do I want my learners to feel? Do I want them to feel calm? Do I want them to feel excited? Do I want them to feel hopeful, curious? So whatever it is, those positive emotions that I want them to feel, I list it down so that I can be more intentional about creating activities that embody that. So you're saying that you want them to feel inspired, excited, motivated, curious, confident. You want them to feel loved. You want them to have a eureka moment. You want them to feel like they belong. You want them to feel relaxed. You want them to feel enthusiastic and that they're just enjoying the learning. You want them to feel encouraged. So it's good that you're aware of what positive emotion you want your students to feel while learning so that you can create activities that bring those out. So for instance, you want them to be calm, put in more of those calming activities. If you want them to feel motivated and excited, put in those more exciting games and fun activities. So for instance, my next question now is, if fun is my target emotion, I want my students to be having fun, what do you think you can do to make learning fun? So please answer that on Menti. What do you do to make learning fun? So if that is my target positive emotion, I want to source now the tips from you about what do you do to make learning fun. Ooh, have rewards, have interactive quizzes. I love it. Whenever there's interactive quizzes now, I'm so much more excited to learn because I'm a little competitive. Gamified assessment, games. Ooh, doing role play. That sounds fun. Um, Activities, specific activities, or even checking the interests of the kids. So, for instance, my nephew right now, he loves anime. So, if I mention anime, he's so excited. I don't even have to know the anime so well, but I mention the anime, he's already super excited. So, be aware. I like that tip that check what they're interested in and if try to embed that in your class. That brings so much excitement to them. Um, do brain breaks. I love it. Yeah, brain breaks, those little icebreakers, make it more experiential, have artistic activities. In your instructional materials, there's energy and a clear voice. Um, do a cheer after your task. See, all of these make it so much more fun. So feel free to take a screenshot of these really great ideas that you're all putting in to make your learning fun. So if fun is your target positive emotion, then put in those activities that will make people have more fun. Put in an editorial cartoon, do a creative and active storytelling. Oh, I like this tip. We did this also at work. You tell them that they can use virtual filters that express what they're feeling, and then take a picture of the class and post it in your virtual classroom. This sets the mood of the class. So people can come in as a kangaroo, they can come in as a potato if that embodies what they're feeling. And it's so fun. It's so fun to see all these different, filters and shapes and images on our screens. That's something we can't do in a face-to-face classroom, but it's something that we can have fun with in a virtual class. So whoever wrote this, Princess, on the chat box is sharing appreciation for your idea. So thanks so much, everyone, for the great, great ideas that you put in here. Memes, jokes, interactions with them, talent presentations. Those are all super fun. So someone said this, do brain breaks. So for like my own brain break tips are usually you have a messenger with them or some sort of channel where you're talking to your students. You can ask them stuff like, hey, post your favorite meme of the day. I'm really like having so much fun with this particular meme right now. I find it so funny. So let's say you're already feeling now nagda-drop na yung energy ng class mo. Yeah, nawawala na ng positive emotions. Just take like a 5-minute brain break and just have everyone send in all of the funny memes that they've been seeing. Sana naman appropriate yung memes nila and that your students know at the appropriate age level memes. Or even like, hey, drop a song of what you're listening to right now. So I know my team loves K-pop right now, so I've been trying really hard to relate to them. So I've been listening to a lot of K-pop as well. So you can just say things like that. Hey, drop a song that you're listening to right now. And it's just a fun thing, a fun moment that you can have with them. It's a brain break. You don't have to be studying or like focusing on the class or on like very pragmatic learning throughout the whole time. It's normal to take breaks. So give your students that brain break, do something fun when you do it. And games, like another person has said, like Kahoot makes it easy, or any games that you can think of during your learning. And the next thing is, okay, I'm a little pressed for time, I realize, but the next thing is character strengths. The next tip is have students actually recognize and learn about their character strengths. And to me, to explain what strengths are to you, this is my easiest way that I can explain it. I base it on this movie, Kung Fu Panda. Have any of you seen Kung Fu Panda before? The first one. When I watched it, it was because my nephew loved it so much. So Charlotte has seen it. How about the others? Have you seen Kung Fu Panda? Kyria has seen it. Arlene has seen it, and she loves it. Janice has seen it. Jerry too. So I'm gonna if I spoil this, I'm sorry. I feel like fair enough to spoil because it's been a long time. I think it came out in 2008. So for those of you who don't know Kung Fu Panda, this is a story. It was set in the Valley of Peace, where it was really peaceful until one day a leopard named Tai Lung was coming towards the city because he really wanted to get this dragon scroll. And he wanted this because it was prophesied whoever would wield the dragon scroll would have that great power. So he was after this, and nothing was going to stop him. If he had to ruin the city to get it, he would do it. Luckily, the Furious Five were there to defend the city, but it was prophesied that it wasn't going to be them who could stop the leopard. Instead, it was prophesied that the dragon warrior, or the one to stop the leopard, would be this panda. And when they saw that it was going to be him, people were like, huh? Bakit siya? Parang hindi naman bagay na maging warrior siya, or hindi naman mukha na kakayanin niya to. But, he did the training. They still didn't believe in him. But there was no time to waste anymore because Tai Lung, or the leopard, was still coming. And the Furious Five stepped in his way, but they were all defeated. So it was up to the panda, Po. So in his panic, what he did was he grabbed the dragon scroll. He opened it, believing that a surge of power would come over him and he would have everything that it takes to defeat the leopard. But when he opened it, to his great disappointment, it was blank. And as he kept looking at the scroll, he realized the wisdom is there's no secret ingredient. It's just you. And you can think of strengths as like that as well. There's no secret ingredient. You don't have to be like anybody else. What you have to be is you. The strengths are already within you. So knowing that, he did very unique moves that only he could do to defeat the leopard, and even the famous Kadoosh. And with that, he defeated the leopard. So the lesson is there's no secret ingredient. It's just you. The same goes with strengths and helping your students explore their character strengths. They don't have to be like anybody else. They don't have to copy someone. They don't have to pretend to be someone. There's no secret ingredient. They just have to be themselves and discover their strengths. So let's try this activity. Can you type in the chat box all the letters of the alphabet from letter A to letter Z? And let's see who is the first one who would be able to do that. The complete, A to Z, like complete. Let's see. Oh, okay. Someone has done it already and the chat box is moving super fast. Let me see if I can see who did it. So the fastest was like less than 13 seconds. And I believe it was Clarissa. Good job, Clarissa. That's super fast. Now everyone just hit enter wherever you are. I'm going to just reset the chat box. Oh, shucks. I'm sending it to Jamar. Sorry, Jamar, flooded you with dots. So let's reset, delete everything, delete, or just click enter. And the next challenge is type it backwards from letter Z to letter A. The way that you did it kanina, so no código, no cheating, just remember it. Z, what's after Z? Y, and then what's after Y? And then type it all in the chat box. Let's see who's going to be first. Sorry, Charlotte said, gusto ko na lang po maging talong. Sorry, natawa ko doon. Okay, someone has done it already. Everyone, just hit enter. Wherever you are right now, just hit enter and stop there. And let's see who has done it first. Oh, si Clarissa ulit. And see, it took almost double the time. Lillian said it's so hard. Princess is trying to find the hack for it. Janice stopped at J, Paula stopped at P, Marjorie stopped at I. Diba? It's so hard. Gusto niyo na lang maging talong, or it's hard, it's different. So that's sabi ni Princess, nag-brain freeze daw siya for a while. So the point that I'm getting at is when you're using your strengths, it's like you're typing the alphabet forward. It's easy, it's fun, it's engaging. But when you're not using your strengths, it's like you're typing the alphabet backwards. It's hard to do. Parang you just want to quit. You just want to give up. It's insane. You don't want to do it. Sabi ni Placida Calurki, yung feeling, diba? You don't want to do it. And it takes almost double. It takes a lot more time to do it that way. That's the experience of not using your strengths. Another metaphor is if you're using your strengths, it's like you're on a highway. It's so easy to get from point A to point B. But if you're not using your strengths, it's like you're on a dirt road. Ang tagal-tagal, ang bumpy-bumpy ng ride, and mahirap, it's not engaging. So strengths are strong neural connections, and the wonderful news is we all have strengths. It's strengths is where our advantages are, and we all have unique abilities. So you don't have to be good at everything, but let's bet there's something that you are quite good at. So for instance, it's really important that as teachers, we know the strengths-based approach, because usually our path towards growth that has been taught to us is look at your weakness and then focus on it and then work on it. So for instance, weaknesses ko to. I don't like speaking in front of a group. I get really emotional. Iyakin ako. So I was like, okay, Nikki, just work on this weakness. Assert yourself in front of people. Even if you don't like pushing for your ideas and you're forcing people to do something, you gotta learn how to do it. Or like you gotta learn to stop crying, stop being so emotional. And honestly, growth in that way is just so tiring. When you're not using your strengths, it really felt like typing the alphabet backwards when I was trying to grow. And all that you end up with is being well-rounded. When what you can do instead is to focus on your strengths. So I've learned through time that I'm really good at one-on-ones. I'm really good at empathizing with people. And I could focus on those strengths of mine to help me get to do the tasks that I need to do. So as a leader, I'm better off doing one-on-one conversations. I'm better off showing my empathy than depriving myself of feeling all of these emotions. I'm so much happier when I'm using my strengths. So when you use your strengths, you're able to really even mask your weaknesses. So it's great. When you use your strengths, you excel in the task, work becomes easy, the task is enjoyable, and you're energized. And some clues to your strengths are the things you enjoy, what you do well, what interests you, what excites you, and what energizes you. So you can even assess your strengths. You can go to viacharacter.org. There's a free assessment on it. And for others, if you wanted to go for the paid one, I really love yung Gallup Strengths Finder. So I want to ask you right now, can you name 3 of your strengths? Like, what are the things that you enjoy doing, that you have fun doing, you're energized, you're excited when you're doing it? For me, listening, I think, is a strength of mine. Designing activities is also a strength, I believe. Oh, someone said being organized is your strength. And yeah, let's see more from others. What do you think your strengths are? Speaking, music, arts, reading, diba halo-halo, we're all good at different things. We don't have to feel bad about the things that we're not good at. We don't have to focus on our weakness. And instead, you can focus on the things that you're good at, like being a mom or taking care of your sons or teaching, being creative, planning, public speaking, amazing, being a versatile worker, editing, adapting, having that adaptability is your strength. Patience is your strength. I'm seeing here Lillian, cooking is her strength. Yeah, so that's something a lot of people will appreciate. Our way to our hearts is her stomach. Placida said listening is her strength. Giving advice is her strength. So diba, we have all of these strengths going for us. So let's not ignore that we have all of these things. Sometimes in school, we keep focusing on the weakness of our students that they need to work on, when actually what we can do is take more time to focus on their strengths. So spot their strengths. Like if you see that they're kind, really give them that feedback. It's great to see that you're showing kindness and helping your friends. Do you see that someone's funny? Say thank you for tapping into your strength of humor and sharing funny jokes to make us laugh. Or if you see someone trying hard, na you can say na, alam kong pagod ka na pero nagpursige ka para tapusin yung module, proud ako sa'yo. So whenever you see your students displaying their strengths, really spot it and really, highlight it, thank them for it. Help them see that they have a lot of character strengths that are beautiful and good about them. And so my last one is building a resilient mindset, because sometimes what we end up doing is catastrophizing. We end up saying, oh, the day sucks, or like everything's burning in flames, or the world is coming to an end. That's catastrophizing, and it doesn't help us create a resilient mindset. And you can help your students stop themselves from catastrophizing by asking them something like, what went well? So now I'm going to give you a situation on Mentimeter. Reflect on a tough class you had and try to find, like, really scan your mind for something that went well in that class. What is a tough class you had? My gosh, why is my screen? Okay. Reflect on a tough class you had and then what went well. So for instance, when we feel like the news is overwhelming, class is tough, you catastrophize sometimes that this is the worst setup ever, I hate it. That doesn't help you build a resilient mindset. So instead, you can do an exercise like, hey, what went well today? Oh, so sabi ni Jerry, okay, he had a tough class. What went well? What went well is natapos din. And yes, Jerry, you're right. That is something that went well. That's something that went well for you. You're able to finish it from start to end without quitting. What went well in your class is there was a smile. What went well is people still submitted. What went class is the content and the class objectives were still delivered, even if it was tough. What went well is, your students still became industrious. What went well is that you showed patience. What went well is that you were able to probably learn from that experience and make the next one better. What went well is how you handled a specific child who was really hyperactive in that class. So it's a skill, it's a muscle that we're going to have to help our students exercise to help them build that resilient mindset by, prompting them at the end of the class. Just ask them, what went well. That's something that will keep them from developing a catastrophizing mindset. Instead, prompt them by asking what went well. That will help them build their resilient mindset. But no matter how difficult and challenging things are, there's probably still something that goes well. And the last practice is gratitude. And I also want to ask this to you right now. What are you grateful for today? Can you share this on Mentimeter? What is one thing that you're grateful for today? For me, I always wake up every day being really grateful for my health. I know it's something that we can't take for granted these days. If you have your health, that is a lot, something to be really grateful for. Oh, that's nice. People said this webinar. So I'm grateful for your presence as well. You're grateful for your workplace. You're grateful for food. You're grateful for COA, for the bravery that they're showing and for them following the due process. It's really amazing that they're doing that. You're grateful to be alive. You're grateful that you survived another day. You're grateful for your family, that you slept 8 hours, that the busy day is about to be over. You're grateful that all is well. You're grateful that we're all healthy. You're grateful that all your students passed the course. And if you're able to practice a moment where you're embedding great gratitude, you're giving people that moment to have that reflection of something that they're grateful for, that's something that will really lift up and boost your students amidst all of the difficulties that have happened there in their life, amidst all of the difficulties that are happening right now. So that was our learning roadmap for today. We first talked about why. Why is there a need to be trauma informed if you are teaching in an under-resourced community, or even if you're teaching these days, it's likely some of your students have experienced trauma, and it's important to know how to reach them. Then we talked about what is trauma-informed positive education. It's bridging trauma-informed learning and positive education so that you're able to reach your most trauma-affected students and also help them succeed and build their psychological resources. We talked about how can you embed positive education when teaching in difficult circumstances. And we went through these six. We talked about self-regulation, building relationships, building positive emotions, helping them recognize their character strengths, building that resilient mindset, and also, just capping it all off with gratitude. So that was our webinar today. I just want to give a shout out to Tom Branzel. He is the one who put this model together. And I had the great privilege of meeting him when I was studying in Melbourne. He was also doing his PhD in the same school at the University of Melbourne. And he shared the research with me. He was even nice enough to have coffee with me and to listen to my story as a public school teacher. And he's heading the Berry Street education model. There's more resources there. If you wanted to check out the good work that he's doing, we'll paste a link in the chat box. He also just released a book, Creating Trauma-Informed Strengths-Based Classrooms. He didn't tell me to advertise it. I haven't even spoken to him in a while, but when I was reading the book, it really felt like how I felt when I was having coffee with him and he was teaching me all of these things. So I'm great. I'm so grateful for him, and that gratitude overflows. And that's why we wanted to share this for free with all of you here who are watching today. So thanks. That's Tom Branzel. If you wanted to look for him, he's sharing great resources all the time. And one thing that I want to also share with you is when you're working with trauma affected students, it can feel that they need a lot from you. I hope you never think that you're not enough. In fact, there's something very special about each of you. There's something very special that only you can bring as a teacher. And the very fact that you chose to still teach amidst the difficult circumstances, amidst the stress, amidst the challenges, that's already really something special. So I hope you never think that you're not enough. Your students, they need a lot from you. But just by coming into this webinar, learning with me, spending this hour with all of us, you're already learning how to be a better teacher for them. And you all should give yourselves a pat on the back for your work as educators. I salute all of you and I pray and support all of you. And I'm really grateful that you do the work that you do. So that is, that's the webinar. If you want to ask questions, you can pop it in on Pigeonhole. So you can either scan this or click on the Pigeonhole link that we're going to be putting in the chat box and join. Let me know what your questions are there. We actually have 10 minutes for that Q&A, and I'm reading your messages here in the chat box, and I'm really grateful that you all appreciated it. I'm grateful that you're here. You're busy, but you're still going the extra mile to become excellent teachers for your students. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for this webinar. Will there be other webinars same as this one? A perfect time for me to highlight the next webinar coming up is actually by Gio. It's on August 25, and it's all about supporting teacher well-being. Because if we as teachers care for our students, we first have to take care of our own well-being. We can't give to our students what we don't have for ourselves. So how to take care of your well-being, it's focused on you as a teacher. That's going to be given by Gio on August 25 at 3 p.m. So we'll post a link of that in the chat box. You can also follow our Facebook page so that you're always updated on all of the free webinars that we give. Every month, we give 3 free webinars that you all can attend and share with others. And it's just a great privilege that we can share what we've learned with you and support you. So you can check out Gio's webinar on the 25th, and also you can check out our Facebook page because we do this every month. Yay, I hope this answers a question. how to be you po. Again, with a strengths-based approach. You don't have to be me, you just be yourself. Know your strengths, let it come out, and you would do great things. And I'm again very grateful that you're here and that you're teaching. My question is, how can I be like you? That during this difficult time, you still have that courage to teach and be a teacher. So I'm more proud of all of you. Um, One question: what process should be applied if the students are experiencing trauma in the family? So I think as a teacher, we do have to know the supporting agencies that are there to help us, because I don't know the context of your student. Is it domestic abuse? Is it domestic violence? Things like that. We should know that there are supporting agencies, government agencies that are there to help. So if you're suspecting something really serious, DSWD should be there to support, and know that you're not alone as a teacher. You can access those supports, and also yeah, to be able to support your student better. So I don't fully know the context of what that trauma is, but know that you're not alone. There's government agencies, nonprofit agencies, and other offices attached to your school, like the guidance office, who can help you out to address specifically if your student needs help. I know it's not ideal all the time, that sometimes it's hard to access those agencies, but if you scan, there are actually some agencies that can help you out. It depends on the trauma that your student is experiencing. And I hope if there is no process in your school, maybe that's something that you could raise, that there should be a process for how can teachers deal with students who are experiencing trauma in the family. So thanks for asking that question. I know these are tough questions, but I will try to answer. How do you deal with pupils who are not supported and are neglected by their own parents? There's no perfect answer. And even I, as a teacher with a lot of support from Teach for the Philippines, from my friends, from my family, I still had a really tough time when it came down to this issue. I think the best thing that I can just communicate with you as well is to follow that same tip that I had earlier for you. Um, be very specific about that feedback you want to give to the parents, and then talk to them about the logical consequence of what happens when they neglect their own child. So you could say something like, try to communicate with the parents. You could say something like, if you don't support your child, if you don't give them the time to go to school, if you don't give them the attention that they need, this is the consequence. And I know if the parents had the resources, the access to do better, and they had that awareness, it's something that could help them down the line. So it's not an overnight formula. The parents are probably having their own reasons for not being able to give as much support and attention to their child, but if you give that feedback to them, that's something that could help aid with their wake up call, that they need to do better in supporting and giving attention to their students. So your role as a teacher, I really believe, if you have that energy to communicate with the parents of what's the logical consequence of what's happening to their students when they're not being given the attention that they need. Because at the end of the day, all of the parents want their child to succeed. Sometimes they're just not aware, or sometimes they don't have the resources. But if you give them that feedback, that's already your contribution towards helping the parents support their students better. There's also lots of parenting programs out there from DSWD, from nonprofit organizations. So if you had resources that you can share with them as well, I would recommend that you share it with them. And what else has a vote? Ooh, this one. Dealing with traumatized learners can be emotionally taxing for us teachers. What can you advise for the teachers? I guess two things. One is learn how to take care of your well-being. And if that's a topic we're going to go deeper into with Gio's webinar, so please attend that one. The second is, if attending sessions like this and getting more resources on how to attend to students affected by trauma, because a big part of the stressor is you not knowing what to do. That's how I felt when I was younger. I didn't have the training on trauma affected students, and so even I had a hard time feeling successful in my work because I didn't have the competence to meet the challenge. So attending things like this, getting your hands on resources like Berry Street, the link we posted earlier, they share so much information. There's so much articles on this right now. Tom Brunzel has released a lot, and there are books, and you could even watch YouTube videos on trauma-informed learning, trauma-informed positive education. When you equip yourself with the knowledge of how to deal with them, you would be able to find the work less taxing. And of course, don't forget to take care of yourself also. You cannot give to others what you don't have yourself. So please, I know you love your students and I know you want to work hard for them, but also take the time to take care of yourself and renew yourself, because this is going to be a long marathon of supporting our underprivileged learners. So if you want to be there for the long run, you need to constantly renew yourself, rest, take a break so that you can prepare for the emotionally taxing work. So thanks so much for asking this question. And I know we're running out of time. I hope the answers that I've shared with you were really helpful, and I hope that this whole webinar was helpful as well. Oh, Kate's here, and I think Kate, you're from Teach for the Philippines, my fellow alumni. So I just want to share with everyone, no? Again, thank you. My references are here. I'll just flash it on the screen. And again, we have that webinar coming up. We'll paste the link in the chat box. If you want to follow us for more webinars like this, go to facebook.com/positiveworkplacesph. This is actually also going to be recorded. So if you missed out, we're live streaming this on YouTube. If you want to share this with somebody, if you want to refresh on what we discussed here, you can check out our YouTube channel as well, where we're going to be posting this webinar. And please feel free to share it with others and subscribe to our channel. And we'll post the link. And lastly, we'll drop in the post-evaluation form in the chat box. I go through every feedback to learn about what you liked, what you think we could do better, so that I could take that knowledge and that insight and do better the next time around. So I'd really, really appreciate it if you could answer our post-evaluation form. We put the link of that in the chat box, and the form will close in 30 minutes. So please do answer that one, and you will get an e-certificate when you answer it. So that's it. I'm so grateful again to all of you for attending despite your busy schedule. I'm so grateful that you chose to be in a teaching profession. And to the others here, I'm so grateful that you're showing your support to the teachers who really do so much for our society, for our students, for the children. So please continue to support them. And for those of you who are teachers, I salute you. I'm grateful to you. Thank you so much for being here today, everyone.